Hello, this is Shauna Dumbia. I am the Director of Risk and Safety for Smart Solutions Group, and this is a brief introduction to Lean Six Sigma, just going over the highlights of what it is and how we treat it at Smart Solutions Group. First and foremost, if you're sitting and watching this video and listening to me, you're here for a reason. You're interested. So I'd like to have you ask yourself, why are you interested? There's something there. You may feel like there's something you need to improve. Perhaps in some cases you've been directed to this video and you've been told, hey, listen to this. But regardless, there's a reason you're here, and I'm interested afterwards to find out why. And we'll talk high level, what is Six Sigma. I'm certainly not going to read every slide, but Six Sigma, just that top line is a really good summary. It's a measure of quality that does strive for near perfection. The different Sigma levels measure the defects per million opportunities. In other words, for every million times you do some type of process, whatever that may be, the number of defects you have per million is your Sigma level. That little chart there on the left shows you examples of 1 through 6 Sigma, and of course you're always trying to strive for that 6 Sigma, which means your process yield is much higher. And that little calculation on the left is how Six Sigma is calculated, and of course Six Sigma was developed by engineers. I'll get into that here in a moment, and as such, probably not surprisingly that there is some statistics and math involved. However, for our purposes, certainly for the purposes of this brief introduction, and certainly as we teach these courses, we're not requiring folks to be statistics wizards or dive deep, and certainly even calculating Six Sigma, if that's something where you choose to go. These days there are calculators online, many versions of them, to be able to calculate that for you. But I do want folks to be able to see that, understand that there's some method to the seeming madness, and the reason for it all. And briefly, Bill Smith at Motorola was the lead engineer who was the first person who designed and created Six Sigma as a methodology to improve processes. Again, Six Sigma is a process improvement methodology. It's a tool to improve processes regardless of the type of industry. Certainly it was begun at Motorola, which is a manufacturer. However, it's been certainly used many places elsewhere. Now, here's a quote. Jack Welch at GE, and a lot of folks are familiar with GE, certainly, and even Jack Welch because of his great books on leadership and things that he's written. Well, GE took what Motorola did, and they took it really, basically, they turned the volume to 11 on this. They really went all out. General Electric, even today, if you go to their website, their careers website, and I did this recently to verify I'm not lying to you all, but they, any type of managerial position, regardless of the level, they are requiring Six Sigma certification as that, which means they want people who can come in as managers to be able to dive in, pick things apart as needed, look for a better way to do things, look for ways to improve. So GE is a place that's really taken that beyond. And looking at this is just a brief overview of who uses Six Sigma. I'm certainly not going to read them all, but you can see there's a really wide variety, some pretty large companies here. Certainly a lot of small companies as well use Six Sigma, and certainly most of us have heard of, if not all, most of these organizations. Then speaking about Lean is also a methodology for improving processes, and while Six Sigma focuses on improving quality, Lean is specifically focused on reducing and eliminating waste to increase value. Both of them certainly are trying to improve processes to increase value, whereas again, Six Sigma focuses on quality and eliminating variability. Lean focuses on eliminating waste in processes, basically shorter, easier way to do it. And Taiichi Ono at Toyota is one of the lead engineers at Toyota as well. He's kind of the big head honcho back in the day, who really took lean and developed lean for Toyota specifically. And again, you notice it's another manufacturer, and a lot of folks say, oh, lean is only used for service industries. Both methodologies certainly are used across the board. There's no specific type of industry that one or the other is used for. But Taiichi Ono at Toyota, really was a large proponent of this, really implemented this. Again, Toyota is very much a lean company. Obviously, looking at this slide as well, again, some very large organizations. There are small ones that use it as well. And quite frankly, the two slides that I put up are almost interchangeable, because a lot of them use a combination of both, or Lean Six Sigma, which is what we're talking about right now. And what Lean Six Sigma is, at some point someone said, you know, we've got these two great methodologies for improving processes, reducing waste, reducing risk, improving safety. It does all of those things, each of them do. Let's bring them together and use really the best of both worlds. And again, Six Sigma is about reducing that variation, improving processes, as well as whereas Lean is about simplifying processes, reducing waste, improving process flow. And of course, if you combine the methodology of the two, it really is, in my opinion, the best of both worlds. And I'll stop right here and talk just a little bit about roles and how I fit into this as well. Generally speaking, a white belt is a very high level, very brief, couple of hour to half day session, usually executive level, where it's just you want someone to understand the basics of Lean Six Sigma, be able to understand that yellow belts when folks start to get in and actually work projects to be certified. Green belt is of course a large, higher level, diving a little deeper, using more individual tools, whereas you've got both a black belt and master black belt. And I am a certified black belt. Master black belts, I joke sometimes that those folks are kind of the Obi-Wan Kenobis of process improvement. And then in there as well, I also listed a champion. And a champion is not a certified position. However, every project, whether it's an official project for certification or not, every project needs a champion. And a champion's role is really someone who helps break down roadblocks, open doors, and helps whomever's in charge, that project manager, whomever's in charge of a project, helps them get things done and get things along. Right now I'll talk briefly here about the Ono Circle. That's a tool. I'm not going to talk about every tool. I'm just going to talk about a few of them since this is a very brief introduction. But this Ono Circle is something so simple and so basic, and quite frankly, very impactful. The Ono Circle is, no pun here, was developed by Taiichi Ono of Toyota, whereas, you know, we all do audits and walkthroughs of sites, whether it's a large manufacturing service industry, regardless of the type of industry that we're talking about, regardless of the size, you can do a really quick walkthrough. But when you do a walkthrough, it's a snapshot, right? Whereas if you stand, which is what Taiichi Ono did, he actually took originally a piece of chalk and wrote a circle on a production floor. And in that circle, he asked an executive or a manager to come stand in those circle and say, this is your spot for a while. And in doing so, you're going to observe minimum 30 minutes, and in the cases of the early days, in many cases, it ended up being hours, where he asked them to stand there and really observe. And certainly when someone's standing observing, especially clipboard in hand, everyone sits up a little straighter and is all on their best behavior. But over time, you blend in a little bit, and it gives you more opportunity to observe processes, whether they be people and how they function within a process, or the equipment itself, whatever that may be. And in doing so, it allows you to really observe and understand that. And recently here with Smart Solutions Group, we had a client attend one of our green and yellow belt certification courses. After the first day, went and used this Oh-No circle at their facility, and ended up discovering an error in their production that resulted in about 7 to 10%, and I'm a little off perhaps on that number, but 7 to 10% waste that was built into a process because of a malfunctioning machine. So things can really jump out and catch, and in many cases be very, very significant into the thousands, tens of thousands, and quite frankly, even millions of dollars. I have seen a few examples where it's reached that high. Sometimes we ask ourselves, do I really need Lean Six Sigma? My response, of course, I'm a certified black belt. I'm a teacher. I've taught for over 12 years, these courses over 12 years. Yes, sir, I certainly think you do. And I pose to you that you already use it. Everyone's familiar with these types of drawers. We all have some version of what looks like the picture on the right. Hopefully fewer of us have something that looks like the picture on the left. But those organizational cubby things that we all have for our silverware drawers, that's a form of Lean Six Sigma. It's putting things in their place. It's creating a spot for things. And again, looking at, go through this very quick, is this really only for manufacturing? No, service industries use it. Large banks, large financial companies, service companies, large nonprofit, obviously, military, governmental agencies, all use Lean Six Sigma. Another misconception is, quite frankly, you have to be a stats expert. No, you don't have to be a stats genius. Quite frankly, most of any tools, if you want to dive into that statistics part of things, which not every project does, but if you're in a project where that would lean towards, no pun intended, lean towards aiding you in working some things out and using some of those more statistical heavy tools, then there are tools online to be able to do that. And there are lots of opportunities to use things that don't require you having to, break out the old abacus to be able to figure things out. Now, we talk a lot about stakeholders, and this is business 101 type of conversation. And one thing you'll see with Lean Six Sigma, there are a lot of business 101, I call it even project management 101 type of ideas talked about, talking about stakeholders. Who are your stakeholders when you're working a project? Obviously, you've got internal and external stakeholders, and that's one thing we focus on is understanding who's really involved, who's going to be affected by any project, who should be consulted with everything, because of course when someone's working a project, it's not them on high. For instance, if I'm working at a project, I'm not queen bee on high coming in and saying, I know what you need. It's involving everyone, upstream, downstream, all levels of a business, whether it be executive level or boots on the ground folks. Another tool that we talk about regularly with Lean Six Sigma is DMAIC. That acronym stands for these define, measure, analyze, improve, control. I won't get into it too deep, but that's the basics. Every project or every time you're working anything within Lean Six Sigma, we're always thinking in these terms. We're always defining what we're doing. We're making sure we're measuring, and measuring accurately. We know what we're measuring before we analyze and improve. And then, of course, control is something I harp on quite a bit. That's the sustainability piece, because it's great to come in with some sort of solution to a problem, but there's not sustainability built into the way it's upgraded, it's changed in somehow, then of course things tend to unravel. Process maps, of course, all kinds of process maps, I won't get into that, are kind of part and parcel of working through Lean Six Sigma. Anything from something extremely very, very basic like this here, or something where you're getting into swim lanes, where you're seeing different teams, different departments, whatever that may be. In some cases, this is just to aid folks at a higher level to be able to see that, or in some cases, process map is the proverbial bird's eye 10,000 foot view level. It's not certainly an SOP, a standard operating procedure. Then, of course, you can map anything, and you can do these big deep dive ones, and I certainly have done so over my career, but that you can keep it simple, or you can get as detailed as you need. And I am a large proponent, probably not a surprise, of keeping it simple, keeping it basic, and really understanding the scope of what you're doing. Of course, part of Lean Six Sigma, this is very basic. This is something that comes from Six Sigma. Many of these tools come from either Lean or Six Sigma, or are used in both. A3 is used in both, and like the paper itself, and A3 is just, it's a basic report, and you can do a Google for, Lean Six Sigma A3 and come up with hundreds, if not thousands, of templates to use them. And of course, that's something as we go through our training here at Smart Solutions Group that we start with and use, and it's something to give someone who's working something, particularly someone new, a guide that gives prompting questions to be able to know where to start, how to move, and to be able how to do things. 5Y is another tool that's used, and that's something that's so simple, and I talk about this sometimes about embracing your inner toddler. Toddlers ask a lot of questions, that why over and over. Well, 5Y is a very simple and very basic and, quite frankly, very effective tool on diving down to root cause, and this is a tool for root cause analysis. So again, I won't get into this too deeply, but this is the tool that we talk about and speak of. We also talk about critical to quality, again, basic business methodology here, understanding what's critical to quality for all of these things, as well as understanding who your customer is for any particular process. Certainly a customer could be someone external. It could be also, of course, internal customers. It could be a peer. It could be someone upstream, downstream. It could be anyone. And speaking about streams, we do value stream mapping on occasion. Value stream mapping is, I'll call it a rather simplified version of sort of a souped up process map, if you will, and we go into these and how they can help you as we work on things like that. Cause and effect, we talk about that as well. Fishbone analysis is something very basic, very simple, and again, a very easy prompting way to be able to, whether it be a brainstorm session, which in itself is a tool, or being able to sit down with a team or teams to be able to talk about cause and effect of any particular process. Certainly FMEA, which is failure modes and effects analysis. This is also a very useful tool that we talk about using and understanding how to use this, and how it can be a really good tool to verify where your biggest risks are in a particular process. Because quite frankly, many times we walk in thinking we know exactly where the biggest risk is for a process, and using this FMEA tool is a great way to either validate that, or in some cases highlight things that we may not have thought about previously. And of course, standard operating procedures, SOPs, that's a great way for that sustainability control piece that I mentioned before. And we talk about those, of course, certainly how to do them basic. Kaizen, there are, within Lean Six Sigma, taking from the Lean methodology, Kaizen is a Japanese term that means improvement. Nothing more detailed than that. It really means just change for the better, which what could be better for that than that, right? No pun intended. But Lean methodology in itself tends to have, and therefore Lean Six Sigma tends to have some Japanese terminology because it was developed through Toyota. You don't always have to use the Japanese terms, but it's good to be familiar with at least some of them to be able to be familiar. And that way, should you be looking up, you'll be able to translate between the two, so to speak. 5S is another tool. A lot of organizations use 5S already, whether they're a lean organization, Lean Six Sigma organization or not. That's very simple. There are terms that were initially set down in Japanese, and I've listed those here, as well as the English translations, which is very basic, which is sort, set, or straighten. Sometimes this is called shine or sweep. Again, sometimes a little differing there. Standardize and sustain. That kind of goes to that DMAIC thing I was talking about, that define, measure, analyze, improve, control. It's about going through, organizing what you've got, putting it in order, arranging it, and then standardizing what you've got, and then putting some sort of control piece in place, which numbers things. Many of us have seen something like that. An example of that would be something like this. Trying to count through 1 through 50 here would be pretty crazy and not realistic. However, arranged, even when they're different numbers or different fonts, different shapes, sizes, whatnot, much easier to see here, and you would be able to identify what you've got, and even in some cases what's missing. So that's just an example of that, and these are examples of whether it be in an office setting, or a warehouse, or industrial type setting, workshops, things like that. Seeing places where things are organized, again, that's a version of 5S. And again, talking again about DMAIC and talking about sustainability, I talk about that a lot about when I teach these Lean Six Sigma courses, because sustainability is key. We don't want to sit through classes understanding this, going through this training, going through the work of creating these great processes, and then missing out that sustainability, that control piece. So I do talk about sustainability a lot and help folks with that, to be able to make sure you've got something in place that will really stick. We also talk about understanding where savings comes from and calculating savings. There are 3 main types of savings: hard savings, of course, soft savings, and then top line savings, which top line doesn't happen very often, that's where a project or of some nature actually generates an income, whereas hard savings is you've saved money because you've eliminated something, where soft savings, you're saving money because you would potentially not be doing something. So again, we talk about things along those lines. Talking briefly about why you need Lean Six Sigma. Really, Lean Six Sigma is truly a business must. Every business has a process, whether it's a business of 1 person, 2 people, or 1 million people. Federal government, uses, and as do many other international governments as well, international organizations and companies. They understand that. They use that. Those big ones that that I showed on those brief slides before. Those companies understand the value of improving their processes, and not just improving the processes, but reducing risk to the organization, reducing risk to the employees, improving safety, because obviously if you're improving processes, you're inherently improving your safety. It obviously gives you a stronger supply chain, helps you retain your customers, empowers your employees, and quite frankly, you're building your business acumen of your employees and your business acumen of your organization as well. And this is one of my favorite quotes, because sometimes questions really are more important than answers. I'm a big proponent of questioning everything, understanding that. So I would love to hear from you. If you need more information, how will Lean Six Sigma help you personally, help improve your business, help you improve in the role that you happen to be in? And I'd like to understand what your expectations are in completing a Lean Six Sigma training through us as Smart Solutions Group, or through certification. We have certification, both yellow and green belt as well. And so certainly you can reach out to us. We do offer consulting the risk and safety, certainly the Lean Six Sigma, project management. Certainly feel free to contact me should you have any questions, comments, would like more information on enrolling in our courses or enrolling some of your staff in our courses. My contact information is there for you, and I appreciate your time and look forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much.